for those of you who don't know, Rosie is a documentary filmmaker and also a activist who wants to normalise the conversation about neurodiversity. She burst into the public sphere on the Channel 4 digital documentary Modelling Mania and Me, and since then has written for Grazia, The Telegraph, Women's Health, many brilliant publications. So we're really lucky to have her here with us. So tell us a little bit about your new book that you've brought out. It's very exciting. We've got it in the lobby. How do you feel about it?
I'm very excited. So just to give a little sort of context as to why I wrote this, I got my diagnosis for bipolar when I was 22 years old. I had never heard the word said except to describe my maths teacher who used to chuck rulers at kids, or the weather, which I would often say myself. So I knew nothing about bipolar, and I definitely hadn't read about it. I'd never had a conversation about it in a candid way. And obviously, around the time of diagnosis, I was like anyone who's 22 hearing a word for the first time. I was straight onto Google, ordering books to read, and a lot of books in this space, the tone was very overwhelming, and there was a lot of mention of suicide right at the start. And because you don't know what bipolar is yet, that builds your impression not only of what bipolar is, but what your self-worth and what your life is going to look like. Whereas other girls my age were reading Dolly Alderton and Pandora Sykes, and I wanted to write a book in that tone to sort of make girls feel at that age that what they're managing is actually quite normal. So that's why I wrote this book, and that is the tone of it. And yeah, it's about my diagnosis.
And for those in the room who don't know what bipolar is, do you mind describing a little bit about the disorder?
Yes. So bipolar is a mood disorder, which means that your mood has quite a big depth to it. So you go from mania, which is at the top, on a mood scale out of 10, that is 10. And then you also have depression on the low end, but it's quite extreme depression. So it will be suicidal ideation and just a sort of very severe state of delusion. And someone with bipolar can flip between the two. So you can go from high highs to low lows very, very quickly. Everyone's pattern is different over the course of their life. Some people have rapid cycling where you can go between high and low in a day. Some people have really long episodes where you'll be depressed for 6 months or you'll be high for 3 months. And type 1 and type 2 is the two sort of main types of bipolar, where type 1 is also got hallucination and delusion and psychosis in it, which is the type which I have. And type 2 is still very extreme, but you don't have that sort of level of losing your senses completely. It's just a very high. So I hope that helps. But honestly, I'm not offended if people get that definition wrong, because it's so different for everyone that I wouldn't say there's like one set in stone way to describe it yet.
And when you were growing up, were there any moments where you felt like your mental health was not normal?
Yes. Yeah. I was living in New York when I was, maybe 18, right after school. And I didn't know what it was. I just knew that what I was going through wasn't normal. And my depression was so debilitating that I would sort of be in bed for 3 days. But I was very secretive about my mental health because I'm someone who doesn't like to sort of bring it to the table. But I think the highs, I was staying awake for sort of 4 days at a time. And that just became quite a secret. Or I'd run a half marathon and my mum would say, "Oh, what did you do today?" And I could hear myself lying because I just thought, this is bizarre. But I've written a diary since the age of 12, and that was always the way that I got it out of my system. I felt like I was telling someone if I wrote it down. I felt like in some way I was realizing that it was there. But I guess also the depression when you're 18 and your friends are describing how they feel and you just can't relate in any way. I knew that wasn't normal, but I would have never used the word depression. I just thought I was ungrateful or like unable to see the joy in life and that it was something wrong with me, I guess.
And you've been speaking publicly about this for a while now, but what made you write the book? What do you hope it will achieve?
To be honest, I think my main aim with speaking publicly will always, first of all, be for young people with bipolar. just because I always say I don't expect everyone to wake up and suddenly feel so passionate about something they're not affected by. But I do know how around the time of my diagnosis that taking on the word bipolar was what caused my depression to be so suicidal. And I just hope that if young people start seeing this on Instagram or like by an influencer talking about it rather than an NHS leaflet, it will help their opinion of themselves and stop it being such a dangerous diagnosis to receive at such a young age where you're just so fragile. So yeah, just to make it more conversational and help young people build their opinion of themselves in a slightly better way.
Yeah, I really am in awe of you, because to come into the public eye with an unpredictable mood, I think is really courageous. And it's one thing to be in the public eye anyway, but to do that when you can't guarantee how you're going to be, I think is really, really courageous of you. How do you feel about that?
I'm quite excited because I don't know, bipolar also comes with like a love of taking risks, and you have high confidence. So in those moments, I feel excited by it. But obviously when you're unable to show up and you are in those lows and you can't control it, it is like having two opinions on everything in life. Like your favorite thing to eat, your favorite friends to hang out with, when you're in a low, no matter what you say or do, you do not have the same belief set. So it's an ever-changing sort of approach, but I just know that there is space, and that because I've managed to get my life back and have a job again and see friends, so many people, when you achieve that, it's so easy to move on. But I just really want to make an effort to tell a good story about it, because everything online is like so scary. And most forums, like a lot of people never do get their life back, and they're in hospital 4 or 5 times. So I just know the importance of sharing a story of only being sectioned once.
So, talking of highs and lows, when researching the book, what's been the highs of researching and creating the book?
Researching, to be honest, I think when I started working on this book, I didn't go out of my way to research online, just because then that goes into sort of statistics and stuff, and it makes you not feel very human. I think the best information I gathered was meeting other people with bipolar, and that was the best feeling in the world. I think in 2020, in a manic high, I made a documentary before I met Channel 4, and I got so excited. I spent £7,000 I didn't have. I got a director, I got a DOP, and I created this whole film in lockdown, only to be told that's not how the industry works, and that they would commission me to start again, and this footage is still on my shelf. But in that process, even though it never became a film, I met other girls my age with it, and it's just like, you're speaking the same language, and it taught me so much so quickly. And it was just sort of asking candid things like dating and bipolar, like work and bipolar. How do you deal with different energy levels? How do you deal with the concentration sides of things? And those questions just don't spring to mind when you're sat in front of a doctor. Like, I had access to doctors right after my diagnosis, but you're not inspired to speak about the things you actually really want to know. So all of the best research has come from lived experience of others.
And so what about speaking publicly about bipolar? What's been the downsides of that?
The downsides of it, I think it's been a really positive experience, I have to say. Like, I just try not to tune into the negativity when you do it. I think if you surround yourself with the right friends and the people who support you, you've just got to focus on that if you're going to speak publicly. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to do it. So I've just chosen to not focus on the bads. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be able to do it. You would just, if you have a mind like me, you would just spiral if you started doing that. So I just actually tried to not focus on it.
Yeah, nice. And for those who don't have bipolar, what would they get out of the book?
It's quite comedic. I always think, I don't know how people don't manage with a sense of humor with bipolar. I thought I was Susan Boyle for over a week in hospital. I dated my nurse after hospital. I thought he was the love of my life, which I've had about 15 at this point. And it's, yeah, even last year, I think we were saying in the green room, like, I have to deal with highs which feel as intense as ecstasy, and yet I have to sit at my desk and act normal. And that's not normal. And I don't think that ever becomes normal. And it's sort of just this hilarious part of my life which I didn't really have to this extreme before 22. So even books I've read around OCD or anorexia or any other mental illness which is often misunderstood, books have been my gateway to understanding humans in a different way. And I really believe reading my book, you'll be able to relate to aspects of it, even just as someone living in the same time. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't shut anyone out.
I know that you're super on it when it comes to taking your medication. There's some footage of you online with your beautiful
Last week
pill box.
wasn't great.
Okay.
But yeah, I am religious with it because like I said, I have type 1. So type 1, you can go into psychosis. So I take an antipsychotic every single evening called quetiapine, which has saved my life. But if I miss that even one night, like last week, I was really excited. I was on a date and I was awake at 3 and I had to get up early for a shoot. My call time was 5 and I didn't take it. And I felt completely normal the next day. And everyone around me was like, oh God, you haven't slept. And it's like, well, the whole purpose of medication for bipolar is to regulate sleep. It's number 1 with management. And it's just interesting that I guess if you didn't take it 2 days in a row, you're going to get into trouble quite quickly. Like I am someone who needs medication to exist in this reality with my friends and with my family. I would be fine off it, but I wouldn't be here. I'd be in a ward within a few days, I think.
And other than medication, what else do you find is helpful to manage the fluctuations of moods?
I think diet and exercise are obviously brilliant. I try not to stress that too much publicly because I think if you're in the thick of finding out what the right medication is for bipolar, all those things become great once you're stable, and medication and therapy are going to get you to that stability for those things to become useful. The other thing which I think is so important is just because bipolar exposes you to those highs where you read humans in a different way and you feel so connected to people. I think the main thing which keeps me stable is being around people who make me feel good. And my favorite quote is, you don't remember what people say to you, you remember how they make you feel. And I consciously choose every day to surround myself with people where I come away feeling good. And I think that keeps me more stable than any medication or sort of lifestyle adjustment I'm doing on my own. It's incredibly powerful when you're so sensitive to energy.
So you've spoken a lot about your support network. For anyone who is supporting someone with bipolar, what would you advise them?
Do you know what? I think taking an interest just goes a long way. It makes you feel really supported. Like if a friend will say, even Heston Blumenthal just had a program come out the other day, or documentary on this, and I had a friend say, I just watched that. And it's just so nice. It's so nice to know that your friends are taking an interest. I think also it's nice to be treated the same. Sometimes when you've gone through a really rough patch like I did, there was a few years where I didn't drink, and being invited to those nights or being invited out on New Year's Eve, that makes you feel really good, even if you are going to say no. So I think the best thing you could do as a friend is try and treat them, or at least give them the option to join in always. Don't assume that they're out of action, even if they really are.
In the Channel 4 documentary, there's quite a lot of focus on your trust in falling in love again due to a breakup and an episode that followed that. Do you mind if I ask how you're getting on there?
I'm honestly an open book. There's a book. I will speak about anything. But love is a drug when you have bipolar, just because you feel things on such an astronomical level. So falling in love is, even at the moment, being in that state a little bit, you have to up your medication. You have to tell your GP, which is so funny. I'm like, hi, Dr. Kong. Yeah, what's going on? I'm like, well, I really like a boy. And it's like, these are just really silly things to have to admit. But I think, so just to put into context, my first psychotic episode was after a breakup with my boyfriend at 21. And the day after we broke up, instead of saying I'm really down, I started saying I feel a bit like Jesus. And that went on for 2 weeks. It was very grand on Instagram to a lot of people, thinking that I was actually going to walk on water. But that sort of breakup can often trigger people's first episode because it's your first sort of big life event. And so after that, I was really scared to fall in love again, because it just, in my mind, it was like, okay, well, if I fall in love, then if it doesn't work out, then it's another episode. But I think you just have to trust that all the work you do to manage your disorder, then if you're aware of your triggers, you're already half the way there to finding it easier to manage again. Whereas before you have a diagnosis, there's just, you're not on medication, you're not aware of sleep. And now, even if I have a few days without sleeping, it's straight a call to my doctors and to talk about it and to manage it. So it becomes much easier once you know what it is.
I really want to find out what your doctor says in response when you tell them you're falling in love. Is there any?
We know each other quite well now. Yeah. So when you first have an episode, if you've got type 1 and you're sectioned, you have 3 years of care after hospital with an intervention team. So mine was in Westminster. And that actually was at the beginning, it was 3 times a week, seeing someone in that field. And then it was very intense for a few years. But once you're discharged and they believe that you're in a place to manage, that goes down to being back to your GP like normal. The only thing I'd say is, like, when you're in the doctors and you have your medical history up on the computer, when you've got bipolar, it tends to be quite extensive. So I just know that she knows so much about my life, and it does become a really special relationship. It's bizarre. It's a really nice friend, maybe even. She might not call me a friend, but I'm calling her a friend.
Oh, that's really nice. So you've got a tattoo on your arm that says Monday. I would love to hear about the story behind that.
Okay. So whenever social media in bipolar is a difficult one, because when you're acting impulsively, some of the stories I put up I really, really regret. And recently I got a tattoo of the plane from my book, and I had so many messages from people with bipolar's mum saying, "Are you okay? When my son is manic, he gets a tattoo." So a lot of us have tattoos. Luckily, this one wasn't too impulsive. I was going to get something very deep and meaningful, and then I just thought, people always ask what they are, like this. And so I thought, I'm not going to get something too serious. And it was a Thursday, but I really like the word Monday. And that's literally the story, because I was going to get Thursday, and then I thought, I have no attachment to that. Whereas when I was self-employed at the time, and Monday was my favorite day. And then when I got a desk job, which I hated for 2 years, I was just sat on my desk being like, this is the worst. But I've gone self-employed again, and now I really like it. So it's just a word which I think looks nice written in capitals.
So you've made a documentary, you've written a book, you're now speaking on many stages. What are you hoping to do next?
To be honest, I'm just in a very grateful stage with loving life. I'm really enjoying having a personal life and having a social life and joining in again in that way. So I've got back into going clubbing at 29, which all my friends have now grown out of. But those sort of things are like real wins. And then I think with my career, I love the phrase, go where the energy is. And I love just focusing on the people I'm working with and where that's leading me, whether it's my editor who's here from Bloomsbury, that, was just understanding that the people who reach out to you are the ones you should work with. And I'm just trying to go where feels good and where feels right for me. Writing is definitely something I love so much, and I'm trying to write a fiction at the moment, which is quite funny. I think it's funny. I don't know if anyone else is going to find it funny. But yeah, definitely staying in the writing world and public speaking, and just seeing where that goes and what inspires me, really, I guess.
I imagine lots of people get in touch with you via social media, etc., sharing their story with you. How do you manage that? I would imagine you get a lot of DMs, for example.
The only reason I think I find it great is that I'm very like that myself. I think I always message people if I like what they do. I'm such a fan of fan mail. So even if it's someone I see in a gig and they've got a zillion followers, I'll still message saying, hey, I thought you were really good. So yeah, a lot of people who are messaging me have bipolar. And so I understand that need to tell someone straight away how you feel, and that communication on Instagram is actually quite manageable for people, where in real life they might not have the confidence to come and say hi. So I really connect with it, and I can put I'm quite good, as Hector was just saying, about putting your phone away and the importance of that. And in my own life, I have that relationship with my phone where I'm offline a lot. So I find the messages like just a really lovely thing. I wouldn't want to stop replying to them all.
How did you come up with the title of the book?
It's just so ironic because it's just not been normal and it's just not been fine at all. I think, the 3 years after my diagnosis were just horribly low, and I never thought that I would survive it. So I think dealing with my experience with humour, and that title feels very humorous to me. And to a lot of people with bipolar, they read it and they're like, oh, really? It came about through, a sense of humour. And I think I said it in the book, and then we just picked it up off the page and said that has to be the title.
Completely normal and totally fine. And it looks really good next to Robin's book, actually, out in the lobby.
It was the best thing. I was like, wow, this is like neurodivergence at its best. But it is actually very normal and fine. And as he was saying earlier, it's so common. I think bipolar is 2% of people have it. Unfortunately, the diagnosis is 9.5 years from the time that you seek help. So that's not even someone being, out working after school and not having it found. It's someone going to a doctor saying, I have the worst mental health, and it taking from that point 9.5 years. And the problem there is that, in my case as well, because I was seeing doctors for years before I was diagnosed, is that you never get asked, do you also have very good days? It's just not, if you're there complaining about feeling suicidal, no one goes, do you also have days of elation? It's just something we need to get better at asking people who are struggling, because it could really help.
We're going to go to questions in a minute, but I have one last selfish question, and that is, Dua Lipa said that you are an inspiration. To me, that would just be the best moment in the world if she had said that about me. How do you feel about that?
She's my best friend, so she should say that. We've been friends since we were 15. So it's and she deserves all of her success because she's a brilliant, brilliant friend. So very touched by her.
Oh, fantastic. What a great friend to have.
I know, she needs to sing at my wedding.
Amazing. I love that you've already decided that. Brilliant news. All right.
What's next after the quote on the book? Go on.
What's next?
No, I said that can be next. I'll say.
That can be next. That can be next. All right. We're going to take some questions if anyone's got any.